Hi everyone, it's Ranger Angelina. It is a beautiful late spring June day here, and we are going to try to talk about our button bush again. The reason that I do live videos, there's many reasons. One is it feels the most organic to me. It feels real. It feels like I'm actually doing interpretation. When I record and compile videos, it just feels like, it feels very professionally done, which if you've ever been to a park, it's just whatever you stumble upon that you're going to talk about on a guided hike. And so sometimes that makes incredible moments, and other times it means angry visitors come up mid-live recording and start yelling at you. So you just never know what will happen. Yesterday we had some technical difficulties. We had a visitor and we had a cardinal fly at my face. So we're gonna try again today and talk about this button bush because it is something that's very beautiful, and it's something that you can see in your own yard, parks close to your house, but then also right here in front of our nature center. And there's lots of birds chirping, there's lots of pollinators on the button bush, so we'll talk about those. And I'll repeat everything that I said yesterday so that we can have one cohesive video that we can then share on our other channels. So like I said, this button bush, we have 3 of them in front of our nature center, and they bloom in succession, which is really nice because pollinators coming through can have several options. It stretches many weeks. It's not just all 3 blooming at once. So they're all right now on this first one, and then the one at the end usually blooms last. And we do have a visitor that just showed up. It is our northern mockingbird, which I wanted to talk to you all about. So we'll see if he starts singing. He's behind me now. So mockingbirds are aptly named. Scientists name things based on their description. So not trying to trick you. It's a northern mockingbird, and its scientific name is Mimus polyglottis. Mimus meaning mimic, and polyglottis meaning many throats. So it's a mimic of many throats. It can have over 200 calls in its repertoire. And so the question is, why does an animal want to do this? Birds have pretty songs, we know this, and it's to attract mates and also to defend its territory. So by increasing its repertoire with all of these songs, there's many advantages to a mockingbird. One is that by having all these different calls, it sounds like there are many males in an area, and it might deter other birds from nesting around there. Another is the more calls it has, the more mature it seems, and so a female may be more likely to choose that male because it would have increased chances of survival of those eggs. What else? So mockingbirds can even do human noises. You may have heard it do car alarms or other calls that aren't even other birds, which is normal. And the mockingbirds can be tricksters because if you're in the wild and you've learned bird calls and you're trying to identify birds based on that, you could be hearing a chickadee, a titmouse, a cardinal in short succession, and you're thinking, wow, all of those are right here. Or you're hearing like a sora or a water bird, and you're in the middle of the forest and you're like, that doesn't make sense for that bird to be here. Well, it's the mockingbird, and they're very good at mimicking, so it can be hard to differentiate if it's a mockingbird or if it's truly that species that's calling. And one way that you can tell the difference is the mockingbirds do it in quick succession, and so you're hearing like chickadee, 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 Peter, 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 and it's on beat, and it's all these different species. Mockingbirds and catbirds, gray catbirds, and brown thrashers are part of the Mimidae family, and so these are the mimics that we think of, but a lot of different species of birds are mimics. And so the gray catbird is known for its kind of mew, like cat-like sound, and so when it's mimicking, you might hear the mockingbirds going. You might hear that mew, kind of meow sound interspliced with the mimicking. And then the brown thrasher repeats in groups of 2 or 3. And so it might be mimicking another bird. Let's see, you can see our northern mockingbird here. And mockingbirds are easy to ID. It is, there it goes. They have those white wing bars and they have some long tail feathers. And it's calling. So we have some mockingbird nests around the nature center here. So we'll go back to our button bush here and see what we can find. So the mockingbird just said, Peter, 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 tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle. So it's mimicking several different species over there. It's showing off. Okay, so here is a worse for the wear skipper. And it is on one of the buttons. That's what this plant is named for. So button bush. And this might seem basic, but in botany, the difference between a tree and a bush. So bushes or shrubs have this woody bark, but they have multiple bases coming out from the bottom. So that's how you differentiate a tree from a shrub. Because you could have, now the mockingbird's not going to shut up for me. Because you could have a short tree, right? But it just has this one thing, one base. So you can't differentiate by height, but that's what botanists use. So it is woody, and this one's covered in lichens. It's really pretty. And then we'll cover some more botany here. So like I said yesterday, this is a button bush, and its scientific name is Cephalanthus occidentalis. Occidentalis is a typical name in scientific nomenclature, and then Cephalanthus, that's common too. So cephalus is Latin for head, and so you can see these buttons are like these little button heads on here. And what you call this like flower type is, it's a spherical incandescence. Obviously, you know where the name spherical comes from here, because they are these little balls. They're really cool. They look like a disco ball, or like in Dallas downtown, that big ball. Knoxville also has one. And then looking closer here, we're going to go over some of our botanical words. So each one of these is a four-lobed corolla. So the base part, not the part shooting out. That's a corolla. And then the parts shooting out are the stigma. And then there's a peduncle in there too, which these all sound like made-up Dr. Seuss words. But those are the botanical terms for this very unique flower type here. Now let's see if we can find any pollinators. So like I said, this is very, very popular with our pollinators. And something that I like to point out a lot is that pollinators aren't just bees and butterflies. But of course right here we have some bees and butterflies. So there's a bee for ya. And then this is a skipper. So it's a type of butterfly. I think that one's either a Delaware skipper or a southern broken dash maybe. And we have a lot of those on our button bushes right now, as well as our wildflowers. And so one of my favorite things to talk about, which I feel like I say I have a lot of favorite things, but I'm allowed a whole list of favorite things. Oh wow, one just landed on me. And so I love talking about lichens and fungi and nurse trees, if you've ever been on a hike with me. I like going on long hikes and talking about all kinds of things. But I also like talking about a very small patch. So even looking at a nurse tree and just looking at a little part of it and talking about how it can have moss and algae and fungi and lichen, and then it has all these invertebrates, so it has maybe arachnids and it has insects. And so looking at a small section of nature and all the things in it. So there's a really great book called The Forest Unseen, and it's 1 square meter, I think, of forest throughout a year. And so that's what we're doing today with our button bush. We're not going to talk about anything outside of this little patch in front of our nature center. But we're going to look at all of these things that maybe are easy for us to undervalue. So like I said, this could be something you find in your local park. Button bushes grow next to aquatic systems. So ours, the roots here are tapped into our stream. You'll find them next to ponds. This butterfly is worse for wear, but apparently still flighted. This is a swallowtail. You can hardly see its swallowtail because it is so eaten up. And listen closely for that mockingbird going. Last year, when our button bush was in full bloom, I counted upwards of 20 giant swallowtails and other big butterflies in any given day. But then, like I said, there's a bunch of little unappreciated ones, like the beetles and the flies. And they're pollinators too. You're just maybe not as showy. But it takes all kinds. Okay, so we're going to talk about another aspect of this little button bush. And if you were watching live yesterday, this startled me a bit. And if you've ever seen my videos before, you know that I startle very easily and react largely. So I'm not going to get any closer for now. We'll just talk about it. But let's see. If you look, that bright spherical incandescence right there, just above it, there is a nest, and it is a northern cardinal nest. And this button bush here is a very typical spot for a cardinal to make a nest. Those are the nests you'll typically see in bushes, hedges around your yard. Like 3 to 10 feet off the ground is the range that they like, versus some others that prefer nesting in cavities or high in trees, etc. Different species of birds prefer different areas. And so this northern cardinal here, it's Cardinalis is its scientific name, which we like those binomials that are repetitive. They're easier to remember. And the female is sitting on the nest, which is typical. The female almost solely incubates, and incubation is 12 to 13 days. If you have had a cardinal nest around your house, you might have noticed that the males are very aggressive. They'll fight off other males, and they're the species that I think people most likely relay to me are fighting themselves and their reflection, and that's just because they are so territorial. So they typically lay 2 to 5 eggs, and they're light colored, so they could have a bluish or greenish tint to white, and then they're speckled and it's like brown to almost purple speckling. And so that female is sitting nice and tight in there. The male could bring her nesting material, but the female pretty much solely builds the nest and then incubates. So she's sitting in there, and cardinals are a great species because people have an easy time identifying them, which is great when you're trying to get people to notice things in their yard and appreciate the nature that they have around them. So cardinals and blue jays are good ones. Here at the park we have blue jays, we have indigo buntings, and we have eastern bluebirds. So that can sometimes trip people up because they'll describe a blue bird. So you have to look at relative shape and how they fly, their movements and everything to differentiate those. but all three are beautiful species, as is the cardinal. And just like male birds are the ones who are singing, male birds are the ones that are more beautiful typically. Most species of animals, the males are the showy ones. The female is choosing which male gets to pass on his genetics. Therefore, the males are the showy ones. And this sad, sad swallowtail is still here. I was hoping we would get one of the blue admirals. It's a really pretty one. Here's a pretty bee. Man, that mockingbird is showing off for you all. So if you look, you can see its proboscis. That's its, the apparatus that's kind of like a tongue that's sticking out. Oh, there he goes. Here's another little pollinator in here. This is way more drab. You can see it moving around, doing its thing, getting that long proboscis down in those corolla. So I have some people coming in to visit. Looks like that's all I'll have time for today, but you should drop your questions in the comments and I will keep everyone posted on our cardinal nest. Remember not to disturb the wildlife, but I'll check today or tomorrow to see if there are additional eggs so we can watch and see how many she laid and then how many hatch. And be on the lookout around your house and parks and see if you can find one of these button bushes. Yours might not be blooming yet, so they're native to the eastern United States. They go about halfway through Oklahoma and down through Texas, and they're going to be by water. So try and seek them out and get in close and pay attention to all the different little invertebrates pollinating this area. It's really pretty. Thanks for joining.